This week's episode is going to be very, very short but sweet. But when you look at the quality of the individual we got here today, one of the original Dirty Dozen, and if you've ever done any jiu-jitsu with me, or you've ever trained with me, or you've competed against me, this is one of the guys you have to actually blame for putting me on this path. It's the one and only Professor John Will. Thanks, John. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
John has been on a UK trip. He's just done a tour. If you've never trained with him, you should do, because right now I'm going to hand it over to the man himself and explain. John, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name's John Will. I started martial arts when I was a child. Most people did the same thing as most people: Taekwondo, Goju Karate, those kind of things. Amateur wrestling. Amateur wrestling was my first love. I really loved that.
Right.
So I always had the penchant for grappling. And then when I finished my schooling, I headed Southeast Asia, reading some books, which I'm sure you know the author, Don Draeger.
The man himself, yeah.
And I wanted to follow in his footsteps when I was 17. So I took off to Indonesia with the idea of going through Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, India, China, Japan, and kind of did all that. But ended up being stuck in Indonesia for maybe eight years, the first 8 years before I kind of moved on. Training in lots of different kinds of silat and so forth, before, later on getting into BJJ back in 87, I think.
Right, if you don't mind me asking, when you used to read about Don Draeger, did you ever think you were going to be, because to some people, to me especially, you are like my Don Draeger, because I used to read about you being a pioneer, and I know you've said before that you didn't think you were ever a pioneer, right?
I think he did it harder than me. I mean, travel, there was no internet.
Yeah.
And travel was difficult and all of that stuff. For us, it's easy, right? You just work hard for a week and you can get enough money to fly to Thailand, right? But Don Draeger, come on, that was pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
And we've got the benefit of research on the internet, and we can get the lay of the land, and we know people, and there's a network. And he didn't have any of that. He trailblazed and he did stuff.
Yeah.
I was amazed by that, and wanted to be an adventurer like him, and I kind of did it, and went over there, and accidentally, it became a career for me, totally accidentally. I was just a dojo rat for 20 years, figuring out a way to eke a living, but eventually I made a martial arts magazine, Australian martial arts magazine called Blitz, which funded me, not well, but funded me so I could keep all these balls afloat.
Well, do you mind explaining why you started up Blitz?
Well, I started up Blitz because there was an Australian martial arts magazine called Australian Fighting Arts.
Yeah.
This is back, way back, I guess in the early 80s and, late 70s. And I wrote an article about mixing training, cross-training.
That's heresy. You should have been put in a ducking
lynched.
stool.
I mean,
lynched easily. Yeah.
Yeah. They were saying don't mix your martial arts, which is ironic, because some of those exact same people now are teaching mixed martial arts, which is I find funny, but or trying to. So they were telling me not to mix my martial arts, and I was into weaponry and striking, kicking, the verbal thing, clinching, taking down, fighting on the ground. I knew that the approach had to be holistic, but there was no one stop shop for that at that point. So you had to cobble it together in the best way you can. A bit of amateur wrestling with a bit of boxing, some clinching, some Greco-Roman, and then some bad quality finishing on the ground.
Yes.
So I wrote an article about all that, and then some of the well-known martial artists of the time ripped into me in a reply, saying, "What would you know? You're a kid.
Who is this guy?
Who is this guy?" I remember saying something about you're not even out of your short pants yet. What are you talking about? So I wrote a scathing reply to their reply, which they refused to publish because they were friends of the owner of the magazine.
Right.
So naturally, I reacted to that. And I just thought, well, I think I can put this thing out of business, maybe 2 years. So I ran around to a whole lot of people, and I went down to a publishing house. I said, here's a copy of this magazine. How much would it cost to make that? They said it will cost this much. So I knew if I sold that many ads, then it would be free, and I'll just give it out if I have to. So I ran around, and within 2 weeks, got enough ads sold to then write a whole bunch of art. I did it on a Commodore 64 with glue and clag, and cobbled together this magazine, took it to the printers, they filmed it, Next minute it's out there, sold 12,000 copies first up, and I got my reply. And I think it was 9 issues later they went out of business because everyone jumped over to my magazine, all the advertisers and all that.
And then did you sell the magazine?
I was uninterested in the magazine after that point. Job done, so I moved on. You know, but it was interesting, but I also struggled with the business part of it. I wasn't interested in the business. I wasn't driven by that.
Yeah.
I was driven by just a passion to train, and so I didn't want to be distracted. So I sold the magazine for a small amount of money, which allowed me to put a deposit on my first house. So
wow.
And as it turned out, that was a way better deal. Like, because I put it at the start, I bought it for 40, and within 3 years it was 120. So
wow,
not smart. Just a monkey throwing darts, but the dart was done at the right time.
I'm not having that. One of the things you'll notice about John is in a world full of martial artists that say from here to here, 30 seconds will do it. You've always espoused the incremental change and the whole. It's little bits that make the whole. And you know, I actually love that story because I love the fact that you use that to help finance going to start Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So you started off in a garage in Torrance.
I headed to, because I'd heard about the Gracies, and I'd written some stories, and I'd written a story about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I didn't know much about it. I went to Torrance because I rang up some friends over there, Benny the Jet, different people I knew. I said, have you heard of this Brazilian guys? And they said, yeah, there's someone out in Torrance, I think teaching in a garage. So I went there and I rocked up, and they gave, I bought 5 private lessons for $100 a lesson, which was
a lot of money.
Extraordinary amount of money. It was more money than what I had. I only had 400, so I had to borrow $100. $20 off Stan Longanides, $20 off Benny, $20 off Gene LeBell. Yeah.
Jeez.
So they all kind of chipped in. I got my whole 5 lessons.
And they're not the guys you don't want to owe $20 back to, right?
Stan and I are good friends. I've got a good story about Stan, actually.
Yeah.
Yes. I got choked out at Gene LeBell's house one night when Gene asked Stan and myself to come down for dinner, and I said, is this sloper hold real? And Gene said, sure, do you want me to try? I go, please. And Gene counted backwards from 10 and I was unconscious. And I woke up and Stan Longanides is standing up on the couch like he'd seen a mouse.
Really?
Going, screw, you know, because we don't like to jump back out. And he was completely flipped out. And I woke up and on my chest there was a coin. Gene LeBell had minted a solid silver coin with Gene LeBell, your friend, a token of our friendship. I've still got it, a solid silver.
Do you reckon Steven Seagal got one of those when allegedly he got
maybe a slap in the face, but not one of those coins? So so that funded. I did the 5 lessons there, and then I met on the 5th lesson Rigan Machado, who happened to be teaching, who Rorion had brought up from Brazil.
Yeah.
And Rigan was national champion at that time, over 364 fights, I think, 364 unbroken record, no losses.
Wow.
So amazing, but you know, he was up there teaching because Rorion's classes were basically private. There was only 2 public classes a week, if I recall.
Right.
And they were only for private students to get together and roll.
Yeah.
But it was all private lesson driven. So it was, you know, 8 o'clock to 8:30, 8:30 to 9, 9:30 booked out. So Rigan was doing the lion's share of that.
Yeah.
And he taught me my 5th lesson because Rorion had to take his kids to Disneyland that day.
Right.
And Rigan, we just hit it off. He didn't have a word of English, but
Higgins the man.
He was passionate. Yeah. I was passionate. We just connected up. I said, here's my Aussie hat with the kangaroo. Here's my T-shirt because I'm going home.
Yeah.
Here's a boomerang. I went back home.
Here's a loaf of bread that my granddad gave me.
Earned some money. I came back and I went there for one more lesson. One more, just with the intention of getting a Brazilian address.
Right.
So I rocked up there. Rorion said, sorry, can't teach you today. Going somewhere, but my cousin will teach you. I secretly thought, oh, that's better. You know, sorry. Jackpot. Jumped in there. Rigan says, my Australian friend, John. You know what he's like.
He'd learned a bit of English.
He remembered me. He learned some English. He said, don't train here. Come with me to Brazil. I said, that's what I want to do. He goes, Wednesday.
Right.
I couldn't get a ticket that early because it was too quick. So I trained with the crowd there, Gene LeBell and Benny and Peter Cunningham and a bunch of other guys and Kathy Long, different people.
All legends, right?
We trained together, and then I think it was about a week and a half later, I went down to Brazil and I arrived in Rio, got off the plane, walked out, and there's 4 people walking through the airport with gis on and their belts.
Wow.
And there was Rorion Gracie, Carlos Machado, Rigan Machado, I think Johnny Machado.
Wow.
to pick me up. And I went, what? I've never seen
Awesome.
that. And yeah, and I was with him ever since. I didn't even know how great Rigan was until years later. Well, a couple of years later, I was in Vajra Gracie. Rigan was teaching. And all these guys coming in. Fabio Gurgel, all these legendary guys walking in. And Henzo was sitting next to me and everyone's going, wow, ooh, you know. And I said, what, is it a special day?
Yeah.
And they said, no, they've come to train with him. And Rigan's sitting next to me. I've looked past him and gone, with who? Like, train with who? And he said, with Rigan. And I've gone, with this goofball? Like, he was just my goofball friend. You know, I didn't know that he was awesome at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I knew he was awesome at jiu-jitsu, but you know what it's like.
Yeah.
A blue belt was awesome at jiu-jitsu. So, to me, I said, are you sure? Like, they've come to train with him?
Yeah.
And I go, and Henzo said, you don't know? And I've gone, no what? You know. So I lucked out, you know, I fell in. But I chose Rigan as my coach, Machados, because of the kind of person he was, and not...
But he still is. Great example of just what guy he is. You got a picture. He'll be there with like Keanu Reeves on the set of John Wick, and then he's like all laughing and joking. And there's a picture of me and him, in a bar. And when you meet him, he's like Renzo Gracie. You meet him and you immediately think, this guy is my new best friend. You know, it's unbelievable. So when you first did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, as I said before, nowadays you're considered the pioneer, especially in Australia. And I like the way that you explained, you never went over there thinking you were going to be some trailblazer, did you?
Oh no, I mean, I didn't think anyone would want to do BJJ. I mean, I wanted to. I was passionate about it. It filled a void for me. So I was interested in the complexity of it. I was interested in both the simplicity and the complexity. The simplicity because it just worked right away with very little training. The complexity because it was challenging, problem solving, endless concepts.
And it will keep you there for a lifetime.
And it'll keep me there for a lifetime. So I was interested. I didn't think anyone else would be interested. I mean, I just looked back and wondered who these 10,000 people were, following me. But I think that's the way. That's the way it kind of works. So I think it's actually more credit should go to the first followers of someone rather than the person themselves, because it could just be a lone nut doing something. The first followers have to make a decision. This guy is worth listening to. So I think they deserve the lion's share of the credit to get everyone else.
Well, they had credence to it, that was the thing. So, who still to this day inspires you in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Oh, Rigan, Jean-Jacques, the Machados, but now of course the landscape is more well known, the internet, which didn't exist back then. There's so many people inspirational in BJJ, like lots of people. I mean, it's no one person. There's no muse, if you like. It's more for me an amalgam of a lot of different people, and quite a lot of them not Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners, right? But historical figures, even. So my perfect muse, if you like, is Rigan's skill, but Jean-Jacques' nuance, and then Kaya Terra's attention to detail, and like so many people bring something to this artificial construct that I have in my head of who I'd like to.
Well, you see, this is the thing. It's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is probably the only martial art I've seen. Thai boxing, you just go bokor, or there's a few guys, but like 2 or 3 standouts, and then in Jiu-Jitsu you're like, how much time have you got? And what time in your life are we now? This is the guy that you need to train with. But how do you feel today? Are you 100% fit? This is the thing. So what I want you to tell me now is, if you met somebody who'd never ever done Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or martial arts, how would you sell it?
Well, I think I have to say it's not the... I love it, but it's not the complete answer. And it's not the answer for all people. I have to start out with that. Like, some people aren't ready for the challenge that BJJ is going to offer them. Some people, they need to keep their ego floating for a little bit longer. Or some people, they don't... So it depends. I mean, and I'm not all get up on my high horse about BJJ. For some people, it's Taekwondo. It's exactly what they should be doing. Because it's not all about the fighting. And BJJ is very effective, but it's very effective one-on-one. So there is that. It has limitations. But even so, it depends on why are they there. It depends on who this fictional character is. What are they there? They can be there for social reasons. They can be there just to get fitter. They can be there and they can get that stuff from Taekwondo, from whatever, right? So it doesn't have to be BJJ. And even in the BJJ sphere, when they're coming in, what are they coming in for? It depends on where they are in their life. They might want the street application of the wrestling. They might want to be able to take someone down and choke someone out, control someone on the ground. Law enforcement, they might want to take someone down and cuff up an unwilling perpetrator. Soldiers might want to crash through and do a room clearance and they get tackled to the ground. They need to be able to get back up and re-engage their primary weapons. So everyone's going to have very, very different reasons. For some it's self-defense. For others it's just the puzzle that is BJJ, that endlessly evolving complex puzzle. So it's hard to answer the question because everyone's different, and what people will tell you they're there for, in my experience, is very often that's not true. They'll say something, I'm here to lose weight, I'm here to get fit. Are you here to get fit? Run stairs. I mean, right? So I kind of look past a little bit of that, and I will find out why they're there later on in the track. But I think BJJ solves itself, depending on the school, because there are vastly, as you know, different kinds of cultures going on in different kinds of schools. So if you go into the right school and the culture matches where you are now and matches with your life and the instructor resonates with you, then you're in the right place. And sometimes it doesn't. So
you see, this is it. First of all, you were actually, for me, one of the first guys I ever met who was at the highest level in my eyes anyway, in an art, who was the first person to turn around and say, this possibly isn't what you need. And I'd never ever seen that before in martial arts. And I've said before, you will have a kids class on a Monday, and then on a Friday you could be in Quantico. How do you manage to...
I think part of being an instructor is that, part of the lowest level, I think people pitch from where they are. So, if you're a world champion at this level or whatever, people tend to pitch from where they are. And then that perfectly meets with someone at that same space. But I think one of the skills that you learn to become a professional is to be able to range up and down. You've got to be able to work with world-class people and work with someone who's just walked in the door, and then someone who's scared of their own shadow, and then special ops guys, and then... So I like the challenge of that. I like to be able to move up and down and, adapt to the situation, which is, in a way, kind of a metaphor for what we do anyway, right? We're adapting. That's why one of the reasons we took up BJJ, because for me it filled a void. We had some striking, we had some this and that, ground, void, there was a hole. So what did we do? We adapted to fill that hole. So I think people need to be able to do the same thing as instructors.
I think really we've talked about this before, that I really don't think we've scratched the surface of where Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is. If you don't mind, I'm going to get you to wrap up on this, because I know that I just love the way you say it. You personally think that it's going to be the biggest martial art?
I think it's got potential. The potential to be the most widely practiced martial art, because it has so much to offer. I can only run up and down that church hall so often kicking the pad before I'm going to be bored, right? I can only have a fence, ask a question, throw that right cross as a preemptive strike a certain amount of times. I'm going to say, rightly or wrongly, job done, I'm over it. Could be wrong about that, right? I may not have done, but that's what I think I've done that. So I think BJJ can offer so much scope. It's like fly fishing versus bait fishing. It's endless, and your reasons for doing it can change and evolve, and the art will adapt and change and evolve for you. So I think, it can be self-defense. There's a sporting face of it. There's a self-defense face. There's the BJJ for life, the life lessons to learn from BJJ, which there are hundreds. So, I think it can offer so much to everyone. And, I think it's got an edge up on other arts because of that.
Well, the thing is, right, this is, for me, one of the best teachers. I've told you before, you're one of the best teachers I've ever met. And no, it's the truth. It's the way that you get it over. When someone like me can learn, that's it. I'm convinced you'll be able to get a chimp, stick him in a gi. But I have to admit, that's actually what I want to see in the UFC. I want to see a silverback gorilla go up against one of the Diaz brothers.
Difficult.
That would be a difficult one. That would be a difficult one. But all I'm going to say is, this is shameless plug time. if you've never trained with John, you should train with John. If you ever get to Australia, go to Geelong. It's like the Mecca. But more importantly, you're over here every year. Do a UK tour, and you don't. It's open to everyone, right?
Of course, yeah.
So there you are, guys. I just can't say more. And do you know what, John? Thank you. I know this is like really tight scheduling for you. So from the bottom of my heart, Will, thank you, and John, thank you very much.
Thank you very
guys,
much, Mick.
Yeah, this is a guy who tells jokes about being sent over to Australia. You think that was the greatest move ever, don't you?
The stock sweep.
Yeah.
And you sent us there because we were convicts to Australia. Such a harsh punishment.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's like not doing your homework and being allowed to play on your PlayStation and drink in your own bedroom, right?
Yes.
Don't get it. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.